Welcome to Ladies of Another View. I'm here today with Emily and Carmen, and I'm Patty. Later on the show, we're going to have returning guest Dean Galemis. He has his own private security and investigative company in 4 different states, and he's going to talk about a little bit about the Secret Service and the border and what he thinks is going on with that. And then we have a fun, lighter side for you. It involves puppies. That's all you need to know. And first, though, I want to introduce our first-time guest, Mark Prather. He is he's going to share his conversion story that includes some miracles, but he also later on in the show he's going to talk about why the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Well, thank you, Patty. It's great to be here.
I think people are going to want to stay on for your second segment to find out what what do we need to know about getting rich, staying rich, or not staying poor. So I know you're going to have some insights on that. But first, you have a conversion story that I thought is very interesting and worth sharing because you grew up in a home where there really wasn't religion, and you were a successful businessman, and you wrote a book about it. Let's put your book up there. So if anybody wants to see the story, In Pursuit of the Truth, One Man's Journey. Mark, I really appreciate that you wrote this book because I love conversion stories, don't you guys?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us, open this up for us. How did this all begin?
Well, when I was a kid growing up, my parents were only 18 years older than me. And I guess they got married when they were 17. And I grew up in a family that neither one had high school diplomas. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Compton, California. And in our house, when God came up, my father would ridicule the idea of God in the Bible and things. He would say things like the idea of Noah and an ark and animals coming 2 by 2 is ridiculous, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't until when I got into high school that I started having friends that were Christians, and so the obvious question that entered my mind is, who's right? Is my dad right, or are they right? So my senior year in high school, I started to really ponder this question because I knew if I was graduating from high school, I'm kind of going out on my own. And what's the truth? Does God exist? Are these people right, or is my dad right and there's no God? And part of the genius that I've learned about God's plan is we all have that free will, and the burden on all of us is to get to the answer of that question in our own minds and our own lives. Because our mind when we're young is just a blank slate, and so we all have that opportunity to make that journey. So I started to go to these different churches with these friends. I just asked them, "Hey, do you mind if I tag along with you at church?" And they'd say, "Sure." So I went to a number of different churches, listened to some different pastors. The first one was Chuck Smith. They made a movie about his Calvary Chapel. And I started just listening. And then as I started diving more into it, logically to me, it just didn't make sense that we could have everything come from nothing, that there was no intelligence behind that. That just never made sense to me. But I didn't want to just believe. I wanted evidence. I wanted certainty in my life. So I started looking at something. I started diving into the Bible, and I thought, if I get into this Bible, there's got to be places here where there's flaws in this Bible that reveal that this isn't true, or if there are no flaws, that maybe this is true. So as I started reading it, I came across this verse, Jeremiah 29:13. It says, "You will find me if you seek me with all your heart." Now that hit me like a lightning bolt, and I just kept staring at that. And here's why it was so profound to me: is you will find me. That's crystal clear to me. You will find me. Not that I'm going to be like around, or maybe you will, or maybe you won't. But that's a bold statement. And then it goes on to say, "If you seek me with all your heart." That one sentence to me just resonated to say, this is my path to find out. Because either that sentence is true or it's a lie. It can't be anything else. So I said, this is my path. I'm going to pursue finding God. And if he never shows up, and if I'm 85 years old on my deathbed and God never shows up, then I said, you know what? I can die in peace knowing the truth that this whole Bible stuff and God is just not real. Now, I'm a very driven person and I've always been that way, super competitive in sports and in business and what have you. And so I started a conversation with God at that point. And I said, God, I said, if you are real, I am going to find you. I'm going to dedicate my life to proving whether you are real and this statement is true or it's all a big lie. So I'm coming after you and you need to be ready for it. Because if you're real, I'm going to find you. And I think where my life is different than a lot of people is from that moment I committed my life to proving whether God was real or not. Now, what I soon learned really quickly is the path to finding God is through our fears. We are chained by fear in so many different ways. And then what I realized when I started hitting these fears, and the biggest fear that I had early in my life was the fear of public speaking. You know, I started my company when I was only 22 years old. I got into the real estate industry at 18. I did really well. Then at 22, I started a company. By the time I was 24, I had a big company and I started panicking getting in front of people and I didn't know why. And that was the first big fear. But what I decided is that I said, look, if I'm going to find God, I have to go through these fears. So the two commitments I made is number one, to never stop pursuing finding them. And number two is to let no fear stop me. Now I'm 66, so that's been 48 years. And I have powered through every fear I've ever had. I have not let any fear stop me. Now, along the way, though, I was massively stressed out by working a lot of hours, pushing through all these fears. And at 49, I had a massive heart attack. Now, I'll pause there for a second to see if you have any questions or you want to keep going on this.
Well, why don't we take a break right now, because I don't want to ask a question and then have to stop you in the middle of it. And I think that's the turning point. You have a massive heart attack. And just so that you can kind of give us a glimpse of how you began to experience God in your life. So don't go away, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Ladies of Another View. I'm back, and we've been visiting with Mark Prather, who is a successful businessman, and he's written a number of books. And one is, we were talking about In Pursuit of Truth. And it's his conversion story, one man's journey. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Well, thank you again.
Go ahead.
Sorry, question?
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is that in my pursuit of proving God's existence and just powering through these different fears, I had the first significant intervention of God in my life, which is to me the definition of a miracle, was when I was about 28 years old. And I had two sons that were 3 and 1.5 that almost drowned. And it's too long to explain the steps of this, the details of this. But this was the first miracle where the Holy Spirit came in and revealed to me, because I was in the master bedroom, and my oldest son, who's now 6'7", was bigger and taller, even at 3, that he was able to reach the lock and unlock our door to get outside. Revealed to me the sound of water, and it was impossible to hear water from where I was at. And when it opened my mind, and I ran to the window and saw that they were walking down the steps of the pool. Since then, in my book, I outlined 5 different miracle experiences, 2 profound healings. I had a massive heart attack at 49 that caused severe heart damage and put me on the heart transplant list. And I was on that heart transplant list for about 4 months waiting for a new heart. And when I got a call from my cardiologist after my monthly echocardiogram telling me my heart had healed, and he couldn't, he literally told me, he said, I've never seen anything like this in my career. And the guy was about 70. And he said, your heart's back to normal and you can regain your life. We're taking you off the transplant list. I had another healing on my back, which was that immediately after prayer. I had injured my lower back severely, and I was unable to run and jump for about 30 years. That was about 3 years ago, where I prayed for healing, and on a Thursday night and woke up Friday and it was healed. And what you're not aware of, Patty, is I was diagnosed with colon cancer about the beginning of this year. So I've been fighting cancer all year. So I've been through a round of chemo, a round of radiation. The colon cancer I was a pretty sizable tumor, about 5 centimeters, which I understand is a little over 2 inches. Plus, my entire colon was full of cancer. Now I'm in a second round of chemo. The surgeons that I met in the beginning said that I was going to probably lose most of my colon, would be on a colostomy bag for the rest of my life. And I obviously, when after I got that news, I started praying about that. And I had the most profound miracle of all. After that meeting with that surgeon, my wife was driving and she took me to this restaurant on my way to work to pick up some lunch. And I was going to work from the office. And I went into this diner and ordered some lunch. And while I was standing there waiting for the food, for the first time in all my pursuit of finding God, he spoke to me and he said, and I quote, "I will get you through this, but you must fight the good fight." And I knew what he was referring to because I'd had 2 miracle healings. And I was praying, saying, "Lord," I said, "I know you got this, man. You healed my heart, you healed my back. I know you can heal this and remove this cancer from my life." But he was telling me he wasn't going to do that. He was saying, "I have to fight the good fight. I've got to do the chemo and I've got to do the radiation and I've got to do all this." And I've gone through all this. Right now, I'm in this part of the cancer treatment. They told me that the chemo I'm getting, it's 48 hours nonstop chemo every Monday through Wednesday. So I was taken off that yesterday. And the chemo is pretty intense. One of the side effects of chemo is neuropathy. And neuropathy is this nerve condition where they tell you, so look, everybody gets it. It's really painful. Do not put your hand in the refrigerator. Do not touch anything cold, any little cold floor that hurt your feet, etc. Well, when I heard that, I started praying for the Holy Spirit to occupy my body so that I would be strong enough to continue to work through the chemo, and I would be strong enough not to endure or not to have to deal with this neuropathy. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see me holding a block of ice because that's supposed to be impossible. I've been through 3 of these. It's a series of 8 intense chemo treatments. I've been through 3. And each time they ask me, "Are you experiencing any of the neuropathy?" And I tell them no. And the doctor doesn't believe it. The nurses yesterday, they said, "Are you sure you're not?" I said, "No." And I showed them, that's why I took the picture. I said, "See this gigantic block of ice?" I've not had any experience with that. And it's just another example of where the power, what I've learned about God and faith is faith is not belief. Faith is trust. And turning our lives over to trusting God to that level has taken me a lifetime to reach. But very few people ever reach it. Because losing your life, as Jesus says, we have to be willing to lose our life. And he's not messing around. When he says lose your life, that's exactly what he means. Is we need to be willing to release our will 100%, and that's 100% trust. And it's taken me through all of this. I mean, the game changer, even after the healing of my heart, I had doubt. It wasn't until when I prayed on that Thursday night for the healing of my back, and Friday morning it was healed, and then by Sunday I was running and jumping again, that I was absolutely convinced. But that was 3 years ago. I was 63 years old.
Wow.
But now I'm at a place of absolute certainty. And that's why I wrote the book, and that's what this journey is all about now.
Yeah. And your story is amazing. I hope people will go out and get your book and read it. And you also had another book, and we're running out of time, but can you give us a brief synopsis in 30 seconds or less, Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor? And maybe you can just give an just a quick overview of that because we need to
Yes,
know.
okay. Well, why title it Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor? It's the number one reason the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor is because they believe that's where they belong. Poor people believe they belong there, and so they don't try. They just give up. I come from poverty, so I know that mindset. And what I teach people is a simple strategy of people's home is the greatest creator of wealth of any asset in this country. You make money 5 different ways on your home. People don't know that, and they don't know how to use these strategies to become financially secure and even retire without the need to save money. That's what my book's all about, and I go into explain that. I have all kinds
Okay.
of classes and
Give
programs.
us one. You said 5 strategies. Give us one real quick.
The one we all know about is appreciation. If the house goes up, but there are many others where there's tax write-offs and how you can create rental income, and adding all these 5 elements. There's a shortcut to wealth without saving money that people just don't know about.
So I think, Mark, we just have to have you on again because we need to learn more about this book and how to use your house, all the different strategies. So thank you, Mark. I love your story. I hope people get the book.
Welcome back.
This
Just
is
like
fantastic. Well, why don't we start with what are your impressions about what I said so far that resonates with any of you?
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, we were kind of just talking about it. Sometimes it's hard for people to hear somebody's story where they're given so much grace or so many, granted so many miracles by God. It's eye-opening and I feel like it brings you closer to God, but sometimes it makes questions in your head like, why you? Why not so-and-so? Things like that. And there's so much of that in life. And sometimes it's hard for people to accept, but I think it goes back to that trust thing that you were talking about, Mark. Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I think I think you really nailed the most important point of all of it. Because we have all those things. Here's the root of all of it is God wants a personal relationship. It's mano a mano. I mean, it's just you and God, and that's it. And we don't understand so much. And the things I'm sharing with you now took me literally a whole lifetime to learn. Here's the answer to your question. If you can do something without God, do you need a miracle?
Right.
No, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
when do you think God intervenes? When you can't do it by yourself. So here's what that requires. You have to push yourself to the absolute limit through every fear with a commitment to you and to God to say, look, I will not be stopped. I will, no matter what the fear is, I will not be stopped and I will keep moving forward. As I mentioned before, this is a chemo week for me. This is a tough week. When they started this whole round of cancer treatments, I looked at it and I thought, what do? I have these intense chemo treatments every other week for 16 weeks. And I said, I can wait the 16 weeks and get past this, or I can start now. And I said, I have missed 1 day of work all year. I've been through all this because here's why. It's an opportunity for me to bring God into my life because I can't do it without him. I know that. So that's when you reach the wall of fear, the wall of pain, whatever that wall is, here's the exciting part. When you know you can't go any further, you've hit your ceiling. That's when God, he knows that too. And that's when he'll step in and say, okay, I'm going to raise your ceiling because I have no ceiling. And then you will access his power, his wisdom, his grace, and amazing things happen. It's happened to me so many times now, but the bar is so high. And I will tell you, God is a loving God, but he is a tough God. He will not intervene if you can do it. If you can do it, he'll be there with you. He'll encourage you. He knows everything you're feeling, everything you're thinking, but he will not intervene to pick you up if you can pick yourself up. It's when you hit the wall and you can no longer. That's when the miracles start to happen. And that's why most people never experience miracles. Their fears, they're chained by fear. And so when they hit that wall of fear, what do? They stop.
They shut down, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, and you go back to a saying that I have adopted for years, and it's I'm responsible for the effort and God for the outcome. And as long as I remember who's responsible for that outcome, it changes something up here. The attitude changes, and that faith piece really comes into play, I think. And I think that's what you're saying. And I know that, we have gone into this topic, and you had so many good things, and I hope people will buy your book, because there's obviously a lot there and ways to find more faith and things like that. But I really want to get into your other book about why the rich stay rich, the poor stay poor. And you just started to talk with us before we had to cut you off, and now you're back. So maybe we can just get a little intro into what's in that book. I think you said there's 5 steps, and maybe go, give us a couple steps, and then we'll have to take a break.
We'll get us started. We'll take a break, and then we can go into it. We'll have a whole 8-minute segment,
exactly.
so we can get into it further.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have 30 seconds right now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, and we can put 30 seconds. Here's the big challenge that most Americans have with saving money. They simply can't save enough money to keep up with inflation. Inflation is by government design, so the whole key is you have to know how to win the inflation battle. And that's how I teach people to win the inflation battle, how they can accumulate wealth, they can accumulate retirement income, they can do all of this without the need to save money. They don't believe that's possible, but it's absolutely possible. And it's really not that difficult to learn how to do it.
And I know you have a number of different businesses too, so we're going to talk about that, because you know what you're talking about. You have been successful, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back. Welcome back to Ladies of Another View, and I want to welcome back our guest, Mark Prather, who is the author of In Pursuit of the Truth, One Man's Journey. Now, part of this journey where he's been very successful, been a successful entrepreneur and in real estate. But then, so we talked about that, but we're also talking about now why the rich, your book, Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor. And you talked about it being a mindset. And you grew up very poor, right?
Yes.
I want to point our audience to your website, Mark1, the number 1, Mark1wealthacademy.com. It's at the bottom of your screen where we have marksrealestate.net is one of your websites. You're just all over the place, and I know you're working on another website too, but you also have mark1wealthacademy.com. And that you told me during the break, that's kind of the starting point, right?
Yes, that's where you want to get started. Yes, and see, as I mentioned, I was very driven. I graduated from high school early. I went to college for 1 semester, and I just looked at these classes and I go, okay, this is a waste of my time. So I got my real estate license, started selling houses for about a year, and then I learned about the mortgage business, moved over to the mortgage business at the loan office, did really well, and at 22 years old, in December of 1980, I started my own mortgage company, and I've had it ever since, and that has morphed into 3 other companies. I've learned a lot of things, but one of the first big questions was, what's the fastest way to build wealth and the safest way? Is it real estate, or is it stocks, 401k or IRA? And when I was 23, 24 years old, I was making really good money. And I started meeting with people, and I'd ask that was the first question I asked them: which path do I go, real estate or stocks? Well, I meet with Merrill Lynch guys, different financial advisors, they all said stocks. Then I'd meet with real estate investors, and they say it's real estate. And then when I asked them prove it, neither side could prove conclusively one was better than the other. So I literally took my money and divided half into real estate and half in stocks. And over about the next 10 to 12 years, I learned the differences on both sides. And as I mentioned earlier, there are 5 economic benefits of real estate. And what that means is you're making money 5 different ways. Now, you could ask 99 realtors, how many economic benefits are there? And I'm telling you, all 99 would tell you, I don't know. Nobody teaches this stuff. But because I know the finance side at a really high level of investment, I started analyzing this. And here's why you can make so much more money in real estate than you can in stocks. First off, most people can't save very much money. So after they pay their bills and lifestyle and what have you, they're not saving very much money. So even if they're getting 10 or 15% on their stock portfolio, it's on peanuts. And so they're struggling. So they have this big struggle every day of lifestyle, trying to provide a good life for the family, trying to save money. They just can't save very much money. And so it's a small amount of money that's compounding. And then the stock market is very volatile. Companies go out of business, things that you cannot predict. On the real estate side is when you buy a house, and just to use simple numbers, let's say someone bought a $100,000 house and they put 5% down. Well, they put 5% down, that's $5,000. Well, they're not making money just on 5,000. They're making money on the full 100,000. So if you put 5% down, 5,000 on 100,000, and the house goes up 5%, well, you just made all your money back in that 1 year. But if you saved $5,000 in the stock market and you got 10%, you've already made anything. You got $500, that's it. So that's what's called the leverage factor, which means you're making money on the bank's money, not just your money. And this is huge, is when you're young, leverage is the fast way to get money. But as you get older, you want to delever, which means you want to have the loans slowly pay off. So younger leverage is great. When you get past 50, you start throttling it back, and you want to delever by the time you're 65-ish, let's say. So that's part of the plan. Now, here's the other big benefit that people don't realize is when you put money in stocks, you still have to pay rent. If you're renting, you can't live in your stocks, right? It's just paper. You can't live there. So my point is there's no utility value. Nobody that has money in their 401k that's renting deducts the cost of their rent from their stock portfolio. But they should, because here's why. If you buy a house, you get land and you get a structure. Because it's a tangible asset like that, you can live there, and so you're getting that extra value of whatever the rental market would be. That's worth a lot of money to you. In addition to that, is the rent. Your rent doesn't go up because it's a mortgage payment. You get a fixed rate. As the years go by, rents keep going up and up and up, but your mortgage payment doesn't go up, and your loan balance is going down. So you're building all this massive amount of wealth. You know, the average American, 80% of their net worth is the equity in their home. But what they don't know how to do is how to turn that into income. And that's the next step, is how to turn it into income. The other part is the taxation. You can literally build millions and millions of dollars over time and never pay income tax on real estate. Where in stocks, that's impossible. And every time you do a trade, you're paying capital gains tax. And if it's a 401k or IRA, when you pull it out, you got to pay ordinary income taxes. But the root of all of this is, if you go to my website, mark1wealthacademy.com, I have this really simple poker chip presentation. And the poker chip presentation shows the difference between putting money in the stock market versus real estate using these 5 economic benefits. It's a 5-minute video, very simple, but the poker chips will blow your mind, because you will see that when you understand how these 5 elements work, you can grow your wealth at 3 times faster than the stock market on autopilot, where you can basically turn your home into where it becomes like a pension. The sooner people learn this stuff, the better. And I'll pause right there. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Yeah, no, you know, earlier in the show, you talked about these strategies to help people make money. I want to go back to those now that we have a little bit more time. Can you kind of take us through what are the 5 strategies that you have created?
Well, what I was referring to there is the 5 strategies I'm talking about are the 5 economic benefits of real estate. But the new venture that I started is over my long career, I've met a lot of wealthy people. I mean, seriously wealthy people, really smart people. You know, I've learned a lot. And these are men of faith. I'm involved with Legatus, a lot of really bright people. And so myself and Ralph Linsmeyer is a good friend. We got together and we launched this God, Wisdom, and Money. And what that's about is we're bringing in very bright, successful people to have them tell their story about how they built their lives, how they accumulated wealth, the things that they've learned along the way, and integrating, building a career, getting on the right path, how to invest, all those things. But also, the part that is so critically important is understanding God's wisdom. People don't understand God's wisdom. And I'll give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. is why do good things happen to bad people? Why is life on this planet so difficult? You need to understand God's plan and what his real wisdom is for our lives. Most people want earth to be heaven. The purpose of earth is not to be heaven. The purpose of earth is to be formed for the kingdom of God. And that's why the wisdom part is so critical. Is we have to learn his wisdom so that we can prepare ourselves so that we can enter the kingdom, because we're not ready for it. And that's why life is so painful, is because we are, as human beings, we are selfish sinners by nature. And we have to be relieved of that. We have to be purged of that, of that nature. And that's releasing the will. That's where the wisdom part is. And that's what I'm trying to tell people. Look, we all want a successful life. We want a great life on this planet. We need money to pay the bills. We need money, to provide a good life. The wisdom is going to get us the good life, the successful life. Without the wisdom, then we become attached to the world, and then that all ends up, that blows up at some point.
Yes. Wow. That is pretty amazing. It's mind-boggling, actually.
I love everything, that you've talked about.
Yeah.
Even comparing stocks with real estate, I've never heard it put in that way.
Right.
So I know we have to go. Did you have a parting comment, Carmen?
Well, I just, I hope people will get that book too, the why they stay rich and why they stay poor, because that mindset and learning the wisdom that you're revealing right now, that is very, very, very important if people want to change their life, I believe.
Absolutely. It's so important to understand our God's plan is really simple. We think it's really complicated. It's not. It's really simple. It really comes down to this: is we are selfish people. We are little monsters, and because we are so self-absorbed, as these little monsters, we can become really dangerous, and that's unacceptable to God. And we have to be purged, and that we have to be willing to say, okay, my selfish will is going to disappear. I'm losing it. And I'm replacing my selfish will with God's loving will of sacrifice. It's all about love is to sacrifice. And God made the ultimate sacrifice with his son, right?
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
So we have to leave it there. And I think we can't forget the sacrifice. I think we just want to go down, make everything go down easy street. Thank you, Mark Prather. You were a wonderful guest. Thank you for coming on twice during our show.